All right, welcome everyone. I am your Heavenly Father. We are going to take a quick look at what's going on in Georgia right now. For some reason, my camera just shut off, so you guys can't see me, and that's okay. I think we'll get through this together. So here's what's happening. We've got ourselves a volunteer lawyer. She's not representing anybody, but she's volunteering right now for the Republicans. And they found this tape from the State Farm Arena, which is in Fulton County, Georgia. She is saying that at 10 o'clock, a lady with the purple shirt that we can see in the top right-hand corner here, I watched this already, so you guys don't have to. This lady right here. Okay, 10 o'clock, this lady tells everybody, okay, head out, we're taking off, or we're done working. This is what someone is claiming in an affidavit. Later, these people who wrote the affidavit say, hey, the media came back and said that there's still people there. But the media and us, we were all sent away. So they went back at about 1:30 in the morning after being told to go away at 10 in the evening. And they came back, and it looks like the other people had just left. So the lawyers for Rudy have garnered this videotape from State Farm Arena. This is just the regular security tape. This isn't the tape used to monitor or live stream the election or anything like that. Georgia doesn't have that. Now, what they are alleging on this tape is that these people showed up and sent everybody away at 10 p.m., and then at about 10:56, they started pulling suitcases or boxes full of ballots out from this black table that you see right here. So we'll leave it at that. We'll let the lady do the talking. She sounds just like Jan from The Office.
This table, the black one.
Hold on, I don't think you guys have audio on that yet. Let me fix that audio for you. Hopefully you can hear me okay too. So right away we're having technical difficulties, but nobody needs to see me. I just play tennis and I haven't showered anyway, so who cares? Let's move on.
Was placed there by the lady with the blonde braids at about...
Okay, the blonde braids lady she's talking about, this is purple lady right here. And you can see that some people just pulled ballots out from under this table, okay? Now, ballots are coming in from all over the room, all day long. 10:56 at night, now they start pulling these ballots out from the table and they start scanning them.
About 8:22 a.m. in the morning. So she put that table there. So the same person who's staying behind now, the same person who cleared the place out under the...
There, you see this lady just pull the ballots out right there. Just pull those ballots out from the table, okay? All right, then they count the ballots.
pretense that we're going to stop counting is the person who put the table there at 8:22 in the morning. Yeah, I saw 4 suitcases come out from underneath the table.
Okay, so on video, they saw 4 suitcases come out from under the table. Now, the obvious question is, and several senators this is in the Georgia Senate, by the way, several senators said, so how did the suitcases get there? And that's what I want to know. Here's the deal. They just got the tape last night, or they said in the middle of the night. I don't know when that was. They just got the recording. So they've scanned through it a couple of times, and they haven't been able to find when the suitcases were put under the table with the ballots and who did it. So kind of the biggest piece of the puzzle here, they're testifying in front of the Georgia Senate, and the biggest piece of the puzzle, they don't have it. They looked through the videotape a couple of times, but it's 14 hours of videotape. So they need to watch it, scan it, and figure out where they went in. I get that, but on the other hand, what are those ballots? That's kind of the big question here, right? So maybe don't testify until you know where the ballots came from. Let's go back to her. Okay, so there's another gentleman with a red shirt. He's pulling. That's the table that they're talking
upper
about.
right hand, you see the gentleman in the red.
Yeah.
So he just pulled one out.
Yeah. So that's full of ballots, and then they count those ballots. Now, if you're just joining us, this is at 10:56 p.m. At 10 p.m., the lady in the purple shirt went around and said, hey, everybody, we're going to stop counting ballots. That is according to one of the affidavits. We don't know that for a fact. Now, they're also, in one of the affidavits, they say that a gentleman named Mr. Pitts was there. He is somehow with the election committee for the state. Haven't really narrowed down exactly what his job is. However, he just testified before the Georgia Senate about an hour ago and told them, I wasn't there. So you've got an affidavit saying that we were told to leave, people leave, and you can see everybody leaving at about 10 o'clock on the tape. But then you also saying Mr. Pitts was there and saw the whole thing, and Mr. Pitts saying, I wasn't there. So that's where we are. And again, we've got mystery ballots being pulled out from this table right here and counted, but they don't know who put the ballots there and if that's the deal. Now, they do have some pretty hard evidence coming up here in a second. Let me jump to it. We don't have to listen to her the whole time because I'm giving you just the synopsis here, and you're just going to have to trust me. Okay, so the next piece of their evidence is they're going to jump back to, and I'm scared. Okay, so this is their next piece of evidence here. Oh, hold on, something. That's just the volume. Give me a second. I'm adjusting the volume on this, and we go back. Hold on. So nighttime, now daytime. This is 8:21 in the morning. Okay.
You'll notice the table's not there at all. Here it comes. There's the table going in that we're talking about where the ballots were obscured. That lady who's moving it is the lady with the blonde braids. She's dressed differently in the morning, so it took us a while to figure out that's the same person that you see at night with the blue apron on who's yelling for everyone to leave.
Now, so that table was placed there at 8:21 in the morning. Okay. And then you'll see another table here about to be moved as well. So they're setting up the room for counting.
And who stays behind to help tabulate ballots after they've all left.
Right.
So
now another guy comes over and he moves the table slightly out. But we don't see him later, so she doesn't care about him. So the lady with the blonde braids or whatever she calls the lady, the purple shirt lady who's not wearing a purple shirt, she puts the table there. This guy moves it a little farther out. So they're basically doing setup, right?
I can see that
So Trump wins, right?
She's the one who chose to place that table there.
And then another guy moved it, right?
Close to the scanners.
So she specifically placed the table in that place to obscure the ballots, and then another guy moved it.
And then
let's go back to make sure that that's actually and that's where it ended up. The other guy moved it, and that's where it ended up later at night. So there's your table. Okay. Now, how did the ballots get there? They don't know. They have no idea. They haven't found that on the tape yet. They've got the tape, but they thought it would be a good idea to go testify. And I get you've got an appointment to testify, et cetera, but somebody better be watching that tape right now. Okay, so then there's some questions. Let's just go through the questions. Hold on. Here's the lady. Let me go back to full screen so you guys can see what's happening here. So here's the lady. Jan from The Office is the voice.
But I know that Mr. Pitt's name was mentioned in one of our affidavits, and our witness says that he was physically present in this room.
And Mr. Pitts testified an hour before this that he was not physically present in the room.
Clear up until everyone was made to leave. So presumably, if he was in the room at the time, they made the announcement he would be a witness to that. And
he has said he was not in the room. I don't know who this Mr. Pitts is, but he's the key to the election.
He was.
Okay, so here we go. So this is
investigated this repeatedly.
This is the one Democratic senator. I understand. I don't know how many Democratic senators. I know there's at least one because at the beginning, the person in charge, I'm guessing he's a senator as well, said, hey, we offered to the other party to come out today, and they didn't. Oh, I see Mrs. Sinclair is here, or Miss Sinclair, whatever her name is. She's a Democratic senator. Here's her questions.
Just a couple hours ago.
Parent.
Thank you.
To leave, but he did leave in front of our witnesses. Before our witnesses.
Pitts had the applesauce in the break room. That's true. For those of you just joining us, welcome to the live stream. I'm usually on camera here. The cameras are not working right now, so I'm not there. But anyway, we are watching the Senate hearing in Georgia right now with the Trump team trying to overturn the complete election. That's what they're asking for here. This is what the lawyer with Jan's from The Office voice said earlier, is they say if anything is violated here, this is a clear reason that you have to overturn the entire election and the legislature gets to choose. Here you go.
Yes.
Senator Parent.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. We heard from the Secretary of State's office earlier, just a couple hours ago, that they've investigated this repeatedly, that they had a monitor on site the entire time. And frankly, this has been debunked for weeks by our Secretary of State's office.
I doubt he's seen the video.
then I think the courts will probably be able to handle this once you present your evidence to them. As I'm aware, there have been about 40 lawsuits dismissed already. And according to the law of the state of Georgia, we do not have the power to submit alternate electors. The provision in the law is quite clear at 21-501F.
Is there a question?
Senator, Senator, we'll ask questions. We'll have a time for statements at the conclusion. If we
Yeah, my question is, the question is, since this has been debunked repeatedly, what evidence can you give to us that counters what our elections officials have presented us with only an hour ago?
You just saw it. Your officials need to watch the video.
What about the fact that they say that they had a monitor there the entire time?
I can't speak for them.
Well, thank you. They did not have the video. They said they had a monitor the whole time. Be quiet.
You're
Okay.
looking at the room.
There's no Secretary of State.
Then maybe we should invite them back in.
All right. Well, we may need to do that. Senator Tillery, what number are you? Number one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Pick. I just have two questions just to try to follow through and understand this a little better. Thank you for presenting this. Push on for you.
Yeah, get a little closer.
Okay, the rest of the questions are useless for a while, and we'll go right to Rudy. Uh-oh, we got internet issues.
Was there, or you spoke to him about being there during this episode?
I was not there. This is a witness affidavit that says he was there.
Okay, because-
Almost up until, he was one of the last people to leave. Not as late as the witnesses that we have, but he was there.
So he just told us he wasn't there just an hour ago.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
One of the witness affidavits
I know there's internet
says he's
issues.
there.
Hold
Well,
on,
okay,
I'm
so-
coming back.
we
Okay,
went from
I just
there.
hardwired.
Senator Brass.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
Let's
We need
see.
to move
Are
on.
we
We have a lot
back?
of questions. What number are you, Senator Brass? 7?
Okay, we just had an internet failure for a second there, but you guys didn't really miss anything because I haven't gotten back to Rudy yet. So, here we go. Let me jump forward here. My computer is literally on fire right now, so nothing's working. And yeah, still on, no, CompuServe actually, Chris Wilson. Haha.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, so here comes
distinguished
Rudy.
members of the committee,
Save the day.
thank you very much for giving us this hearing. I represent President
Needlessly touching the mic. Here I come to save the day.
Trump along with Jenna Ellis. And this is our 4th or 5th hearing, so I really appreciate the opportunity to get these facts out. We've had some difficulty getting a hearing, but I appreciate it very, very much.
That's a dig.
I want to congratulate our local council on doing such a fine job for us here in Georgia.
Yeah.
This is just only the tip of the iceberg of all the good work that he's done. I'm going to present 2 witnesses to you who are in the nature of expert witnesses who have testified in cases like this at times in the past.
Yeah, if the computer guy comes, we're not listening to computer guy.
One of them, Mr. Ramsland, is going to be on Zoom. And he's basically going to show that in 2016, you had only 199,356 mail-in votes. This time you had 1.3 million.
Okay.
2016, you had a 6.4% rejection rate. And this time you had a 0.2% rejection rate. In other words, 0.2.
So Rudy's complaint here is that the rejection rate of ballots was so much lower than in 2016. And that's somewhat accurate. So it ended up being about 0.2 of the ballots were rejected, the mail-in ballots. However, in 2018, only 0.15 of the ballots were rejected, percent. So the percentage has actually gone up since the last election. 2016 was a fiasco, and Georgia figured things out. They got things fixed. For 2018, we had an election, and you had about a 0.15 rejection rate. Okay, so that's about the standard, yeah? So now, in 2020, it's increased to 0.2. So there goes that argument. But he doesn't mention the 2018 election like it never happened.
So when you had 200,000 ballots, you had a rejection rate of 6.4%.
Yeah, it's a percentage, so it doesn't matter how many ballots you have, Rudy.
And now where you have 1.3 million ballots, you have almost no rejection rate. 0.2% is
0.2%, which is higher than the 0.15 that you had in 2018.
almost statistically insignificant.
That is not statistically insignificant. That is thousands of ballots.
Alone raises suspicion of fraud.
It does not. It absolutely does not. That in no way raises suspicion of fraud at all.
And has been held as such in election cases.
No, because in 2018 you had a lower rejection rate, Rudy. Just nonsense.
And Biden won the mail-in vote by over 400,000. Mr. Ramsland will also go through the Dominion machine, the Hart machine, and how that compared to the other machines that you used.
And we will not be
throughout the
watching
state.
that.
And he will also show you some very, very, I guess he would describe it as indicia
Boring.
of fraud.
Boring.
You had 96,600 mail-in ballots that were voted, yet the county records show they would never receive back. Be a little clearer. Altogether, you had 231,188 ballots with no return record at all. You were able to cancel 134,000 of those, but you kept 96,600 votes when there was no return record for them. What would that suggest? Phantom votes. There's no return record, yet it's counted. That pattern has appeared in other states that were involved in massive fraud.
That probably has not appeared at all.
That a
Again,
good deal
they're
of what I
not.
see here
They're
is very
just
simple.
making a lot of this stuff up. They're omitting very important information. The Secretary of State in Georgia, of course, a Republican, has debunked all of what Rudy is saying already weeks ago. But it keeps floating around, and if Rudy reads it somewhere, he doesn't bother going to the state's website and actually looking up the figures.
Similar to what happened at approximately that time in
It's the phantom. It's the dead phantoms of Hugo Chavez. We know this. 2 years ago, there was a picnic at a gravesite.
Pennsylvania, in Michigan at about 4 o'clock in the morning. People had been cleared out around 1 in the morning, been told there'd be no more counting. All the
10
Republicans left.
10 a.m., Rudy, or 10
Two
p.m.
remained
10
behind
p.m.
accidentally, and a Dominion employee. And all of a sudden, they saw two big trucks come in the back. They thought they were food trucks,
Oh, you're talking about
and they were very hungry, so they ran to the food trucks. Well, there wasn't food, there were ballots coming out. Thousands and thousands of ballots in paper bags, in garbage cans, in cardboard boxes.
Okay.
And then they were put on a table, and they
Yeah.
were counted for the next 3 hours.
Right.
And there were 3 witnesses under oath to that, and they say that they were counted, and as they could listen, they never heard one time that there was a vote for Trump. All the votes were for Biden. And they estimate somewhere between 50 and 100,000 votes entered at that time.
What is
There's
happening?
similar evidence in Pennsylvania, and also something similar in Arizona.
What is
at around
going
this
on?
time. Second witness will be Colonel
I like
Phil
it.
Colson. Colonel Colson has had the opportunity to forensically examine the Dominion machine that actually began to cause the problem for Dominion. That was the machine that was found in Michigan's Antrim County that had recorded mistakenly 6,000 votes for Biden when the votes actually were cast for Trump. And he can give you an analysis of the problems with the Dominion machine, and also just a piece of advice. You've got a very big election coming up. I think you'd be very ill-advised to use that company or their machines. when you test their record over the last 12 to 15 years, I think you'll find they're one of the more insecure companies in this business. So let me first see if I can get Mr. Ramsland on the Zoom.
Mr. Ramsland will be via Zoom.
There he is.
There he is.
How are you, sir?
I'm
So
fine.
you are speaking to a committee of the Georgia legislature, and just tell us your name, please.
Russell Ramsland.
And you're a resident of Dallas, Texas, is that right?
I am. In fact, I'm in Dallas, Texas right now.
And you just give us your credentials, briefly. I know they're very long, so give us the best ones.
I run basically a security operation. We do cybersecurity as
sir.
well as personal
As I know.
security. We have a number of ex-three-letter agency intel people that work for us in the cyber side. We have ex-military people that work for us in the cyber side. We have a fairly robust cyber capability in both protecting as well as trying to penetrate people's network to help them better protect.
Sexy.
And you hold an MBA from Harvard University, a political science degree from Duke, and you've worked for NASA and for MIT. Is that correct?
Okay, we heard this guy before in, where was it, Pennsylvania? It's all supposition. Let's go, okay, so he's still there. Oh, and then computer guy. This is mathematical probability, the lotto is rigged guy. So we'll skip the lotto is rigged guy. And let's see if there's actual questions. Oh, it looks like maybe the Democratic senator asked something here. Let's find out.
First, really brief comment, and I do have a question. Some of what you said, portions of it, remind me of some of what we heard in testimony in various committees in 2019 when we were considering buying this new system, actually. We did hear from a lot of election security experts, computer scientists, and I don't know if you're aware, but Democrats argued repeatedly and strongly against buying these due to their complexity, cost, and potential lapses in security.
That's correct.
But my question is, you're aware, of course, that there was a hand recount using...
Here's the thing, guys. I unplugged my webcam was not working. So I unplugged it and then plugged it back in. And it's doing this. And I have no idea. I have no idea. So here we have it. So it's either this or nothing, which is fine. Probably nothing is better, but here you go. And so far I'm enjoying it.
the human readable text that
I'm very impressed. I mean, at first glance, you're like, wait, what? Is he wearing? I'm not. I'm just. I can't show you because I don't know how to turn it off. But this is what it's doing. I don't know how to change it to something else either. So here we go.
Also, held Biden out as the victor of this election.
Jarring.
Do you have a comment on that? Do you have an opinion on the risk-limiting audit done on every ballot using the human readable text versus the barcode?
Yes, ma'am. If there was 100...
I don't know what app it is. I literally unplugged and plugged my webcam back in and then turned it on in the software that I always use, that I was using yesterday, and here we are.
percent audit on actual ballots, which if that was done, that's awesome. The risk limiting audit, I believe, is a very small sample of those ballots. So
Normally, yes, but
Yeah.
this one,
So if
What-
the evidence that was presented this morning, the videos, if additional ballots were pulled in, then that's what you're going to count. You're going to count the ballots that have been injected into the process. And this is something, again, that we've seen in Pennsylvania and Arizona and Michigan and a couple other states that we're currently working on, is that there is there are huge breaches in chain of custody of the ballots, of the USB drives that run these systems. So yes, ma'am, that risk limiting audit could have been conducted 100% and shows the readouts. There are ways to detect fraudulent paper ballots. We can image those to detect machine printed ink spots. We can detect if they were folded. We can detect if they were marked by hand. There's about 29 different point signatures when you pick up a pen and you fill in a ballot,
All
a
right,
machine
moving
printed
on.
ballot.
Let's get past this guy.
So your opinion is based on the fact that there are affidavits of other people from other states.
Then there is a difference.
Here,
Situation we in, could they been
Okay, here we
come
go.
in from out of state?
The capability exists, the possibility exists for them to be printed. We had voice recordings of an order being placed in China to print ballots. They were given the basic ballots, and they were, again, that's outside of the U.S. and outside really of our purview, but there are indications that there were fake ballots printed up and pre-positioned in places for injection into the voting systems.
In Georgia?
No, sir, not that I know of in Georgia, in the U.S. presidential
US.
election.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, Senator Cardin? Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor.
Let me
thank you very
recognize
much, Colonel. I would just like to finish up with 2 points. First of all, Representative Jordan, you said that the Democrats here objected to Dominion. I should tell you that the best letter written on Dominion is written by my Congresswoman, Carolyn Maloney, who is a Democrat. And I really would suggest reading it. It's prophetic. She wrote it in 2006, and she basically outlined the history of Dominion and Smartmatic, the connection to Hugo Chavez. Eventually, she followed up with Maduro, and how it's a highly inaccurate machine. And I guess this is just a question. I don't know why that isn't discovered in due diligence. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, this is not a machine you want counting your votes. Second, on the so I don't consider that a part of an issue at all.
Part of it. You
But
mean
it does
partisan?
cast doubt on the
part of an
entire
issue.
legitimacy of the vote. And the fact that you have the power to do this, state law doesn't in any way prevent you, the legislature, from immediately taking this over and deciding this. That power, right, obligation is given to you by the Founding Fathers, deliberately. The Founding Fathers felt in a situation, I can't imagine they thought of this one, but in a situation of complexity, the best place to
Okay, I figured out what it is. It's an app called Snap Camera. Snap Camera, and it goes, you put it on your computer. I'm using a PC. You put it on the computer, and then it can, if you turn on your webcam. I put this on a while ago, and I couldn't get it to work, so I did this to myself. And today, it's working. So there you go. So it's Snapchat, I think, Chat, whatever it is. And this is what the kids do. So I got all kinds of pretty filters. So if anybody has some requests, let me know. But it's called Snap Camera. In fact, I'll show it to you. Here you go. So here's Snap Camera, guys. This is the important part right here, kids. So win from home, for example, I can choose. And then I can say like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a guy with a tie on my head. Woo, what fun this is. I can be triple VHS. Okay, so that's no one cares about that. Now, it's complicated by the fact that I also, well, that's not bad. I also have a green screen behind me, so some of the filters are not designed to be used with green screens. So this one says cute. This is the category of cute. Let's see if I can look cute like her. I cannot. Can be cute cat. That's just dumb. Anyway, so that's to answer your questions. There we go. That's what is going on.
to decide would be with the institution closest to the people. And you're the institution closest to the people. And you're going to have a very, very much better legal mind than mine talk to you on this, Professor Eastland.
Me? Oh.
Eastman. My professor in law school was Eastland. This is Professor Eastman.
Okay.
And it's very, very clear. The Supreme Court in McPherson versus Blacker says whatever provisions may be made by statute or by the state constitution to choose electors by the people,
Can't
there
I?
is no doubt of the right
I
of
don't
the
think I can.
legislature to resume the power at any time.
You know what though, guys? I bet there is an app for that. I'll see what I can do.
To be sure, at any time, would likely not allow the legislatures to pick
The who?
its own set of
He's drunk.
electors by whim,
Whim.
but there would have to be
So much
a
whimming.
substantial basis for it.
Whimming,
And that's
whimming,
really what we're
whimming.
presenting to you. A substantial basis, even to the point that these votes are too
Right,
illegitimate
Kay?
to certify. Either too illegitimate to certify, or you can look through them and certify them in whatever way you feel is right. But this is your power, your obligation, and I know it's surprising. I've been before state legislators who didn't realize it, and really, so do we really have this power? And then once reading the Constitution and the Federalist Papers, it clearly is yours. You are the final arbiter of who the electors should be and whether the process is fair or not. And the other way to look at it, it's your responsibility if a false and fraudulent count is submitted to the United States government. And it's clear that the count you have right now is false.
Thank you. All right, I think we're going to move on to the next witness. Mr. Smith, did you want to say something else, or did you have?
Well, we do have a couple of other witnesses.
Susan Voiles?
Yes, Susan
Okay.
Voiles. I'm just going to bring her in.
Holy crap! I can make my own lenses. What are we doing?
She's coming.
I'm sure it looks lovely, babe. Is it secrets? Are they telling secrets?
Right there.
Are you ready?
So there's a ton of people watching this in Georgia right now.
I'm ready. Go ahead.
My name is Susan Voiles, and most people call me Susie. I
Okay,
live in Sandy Springs, Georgia, which is in Fulton County.
that's correct.
And tell me about your being a poll manager and what you've done as far
Mr.
as-
Smith, I'm going to need for you to, I know she's behind you, but I'm going to need for you to speak into the
I'm sorry.
microphone so that you can be heard
Okay.
online. I'm
Sure,
sorry to
absolutely.
interrupt you, but you may want to start over.
Okay. Ms. Voiles, if you could tell the committee here what your role is as a precinct poll manager and how long you've been doing it, and then kind of get into how you were involved with the recount, et cetera.
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
I have been a manager of a precinct polling location in Sandy Springs for over 20 years. I've mostly been in the same location. When they consolidated polls, however, they asked me to move to another poll. Then when they pared them down, I got to go to SSO2 again, which I thought was a wonderful thing. Anyway, I have never experienced in all my time an election quite like this one. I have never seen such poor handling of not only the machinery, but the chain of custody from the very beginning was so flawed. I went in on Sunday, and that's the typical day that we pick up our things. And all our equipment, our big BMDs, the ballot marking device, is supposed to be put in place.
Could you tell what date that was, please?
Yes, that would have been Sunday, the 1st of November.
Oh, this is my favorite.
It's always the Sunday prior. And that Friday prior to that, our ballot marking devices
Sean.
are all supposed to be in the location of our poll. Up to that point, I had no idea that mine were not there. But when I went in on Sunday, I'm to pick up my poll pads, a lot of material. And the poll pads are really an updated version of the numbered list of voters. It's just on an iPad, like,
Yeah, so the poll pads are tablets that you use to check in the people coming in to vote. The poll pads are connected to the central system in Georgia that has everybody's voting information. So that's what a poll pad is. It's basically an iPad, but it's used to check into the polls. It is separate from the system that counts the votes. So the poll pads and the voting machines are two different things. There were some serious delays in the primaries on the poll pads, and the Republicans were screaming, oh, the machines aren't working, the machines aren't working. It wasn't the vote. It was just the poll pads.
device. And it also has a place where I can encode the cards for the voters, the voter access cards. But when I went in, the only thing I received was my telephone. And he's,
Ms. Foils, I'm sorry, could you, we've got limited time. Why don't we skip ahead to when you were involved with the recount on November 14th?
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
On Saturday, well, I was called the day before, on the 13th, Friday the 13th, I was called and asked, could I obtain two of my assistant managers, and would I be willing to go down to perform the audit? I said, yes, I would. Unfortunately, we had to sign up for the entire 5 days, Saturday through Wednesday, and from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. If we could not commit to that time, they did not want our services. So I could, but my other assistant managers could not. I did go down with another manager, and our first...
Yeah, wasn't she just asked to skip ahead to some sort of pertinent information? So tell us more about what your assistant manager couldn't do. What was his schedule? And between 12 and 1 every day, what would he be up to?
Box that we finally got close to 10 o'clock in the morning, I believe it was 9:45, because they didn't have enough tables for everybody. They weren't prepared for as many as they asked to come. Our first box that we got was a corrugated cardboard box that was not the size of a typical file box, but it was just like maybe a book box if you were moving. It was bound together with packaging tape, and on the top of that, clear packaging tape, on the top of that was the seal that should be totally pressed down like a sticker from the Secretary of State's office, which should, according to the chain of custody, have the signatures of those who had prepared this box, who had been the last to touch it. Likewise, at the end,
I would take
that would
this
have been
spoon
my
and jam it in her
responsibility once we
nose.
had gone through the contents.
Okay, what
to
happened?
do the same thing, replace it with
What
a new seal with my signature and my partner's
happened?
signature. We were instructed how we were to do the ballots, and our first batch, our first box, contained 8 batches of at least 100 apiece. One batch did have 110 in it. And as we went through the batches, they were normal absentee ballots, and most of them were pretty worn until we came up to a batch that is, my words were pristine. It was white.
Wow.
It was so white.
Yeah.
And this is a typical absentee ballot.
Okay.
You can see how when it comes to you in the mail, how it's got many folds in it.
Whoa.
These had no folds.
That's fraud. That's not an official
You can
ballot.
see where it should have been folded if it went through a folding machine.
Yeah.
Or for the voter to figure out easily how to do that. But these did not have that. I was running my hands up, and I said to my seatmate, I said, feel these. They feel different. And when you have felt absentee ballots for as long as I have, yeah, the years are creeping up there.
Yeah.
You know the feel of them.
Yeah.
You know the feel of a real dollar bill. You know the feel of a
We get it.
a
Moving on.
play dollar bill.
We get it.
Even though it might look genuine.
Yeah, we get
But
it.
the thing that really jumped out at us, besides the feel of these ballots, besides there were no folds, was the fact that the first one that was bubbled in
Yeah.
had almost a little eclipse of white in the bubble where you would bubble in. And in that ballot, I mean, everything else was right there. But as we began to proceed through, because we had to sort these by Donald J. Trump, Joseph R. Biden, and Joe Jorgensen, and then write-in if we happen to have a write-in. What we began to notice was an overwhelming amount were exactly, not possibly, but exactly the same. So these absentee ballots had no folds in them, yet they were presented as absentee ballots. Even if they'd wound up as a provisional ballot, which is similar in structure, just different type of envelopes, it would have been exactly the same. There would have been folds in them, but these ballots were exactly the same, and there was one in the middle of this stack that all of us at times have pulled something out of a scanner or a copier too soon, and the image is not square on the paper. And that's exactly the way one of these ballots was in this batch. It was also striking to me that rather than having the customary 100 to the batch, it had 110. We found this to be quite an oddity.
I can't. So that's a serious allegation right there, and that could be figured out very quickly. I don't know if the Secretary of State has looked into this yet. It seems that all the other stuff that has come up in Georgia, they look into, and then, well, okay, well, I would think that as a poll worker, she would have told somebody, and that it would have been looked at, and you can tell whether a ballot's fake very easily.
Talk about the
They have very specific paper. There's tests that can be run.
when you were down there about the organization. Oh, I'm sorry. Talk about the organization when you were down there and you came down there and on that, I think it was a Sunday morning, you came down there and you thought you were going to be down there all day and they told you to leave.
On the second day, we stayed until about 4:45 on Saturday. We were instructed to come back Sunday morning, which we did. We were very surprised to find no lines. What they had done was not only had poll managers there, Fulton County poll managers, but the previous day had had a number of Fulton County employees who were there. Also, the girls behind us, they were librarians, but they were Fulton County librarians. They were there to do this. So on Sunday morning when we went down, it was fairly void of.
No, a whole stack of ballots. So she's saying that a whole stack of ballots were given to them, that all of a sudden they didn't have any folds in them, which is very suspicious, and that they all seem to be very similar, but that some were Trump, some were Biden, some were. Now, overwhelmingly, the ballots coming in by the mail were for Biden. That's just the way it worked out, especially since President Trump was saying for months, don't vote by mail, don't do it.
Anybody. We were just very surprised. We were instructed to go to our table that we had had the day before.
Yeah, at Liberty Likely, there were probably just write-in replacements for unreadable ballots. So those would be duplicate ballots, most likely. But again, this is another person outside the chain of custody who doesn't know where these ballots come from.
People came in after us.
For everything else that we've seen, there's a logical explanation. Oh no, the lady set up a table. Yes, that was her job, to set up tables. Oh no, they pulled the votes out from under the table. Yes, because the area where they were storing votes was stacked too high, so they found other places to put the vote. Like, there's all of it, example after example. By the way, this is kind of cool. David with Snopes sent this link to me earlier. So remember the trucker guy with the weird beard who said he had driven thousands of ballots from New York to Pennsylvania and then the trailer magically disappeared? He also believes that his family is haunted and that the ghosts are following him from state to state. Him and his brothers have literally produced movies and had GoFundMes about ghosts. So that's the phantom ballots. He also believes in phantoms and that he's got videos on YouTube of phantoms in his house.
Us, including the people at the table behind us, we gave our table number so that we could get our ballots. We waited and we waited. The people behind us got theirs. They had over 3,000 from Sandy Springs precincts. The people in front of us had over 6,000 from another precinct. And when our box came, you know, our eyes were getting kind of big because that was a lot of ballots to get through. When we got ours, we opened up our box, and the Fulton County ballot boxes are like heavy-duty suitcases with padding on the inside and roller carts. We had the young man unseal ours, and then
She really paints a picture, because I was like, wait, who unsealed it for you? Was he young? Was he male? Female? Tell us the pertinent details so we really get into this.
we opened it, I was kind of aghast. We had one batch of the machine-generated ballots in there from the BMDs, the ballot marking device. There were 60 of them in that batch. They were all from a quality living center, and which is in, I believe, southwest Atlanta. I do know it's South Atlanta. And all we had was
Okay, forget the whole Heavenly Father spiel. It's not working. I'm going with Jello Head from now on. You're looking at the next internet sensation.
60.
Why? Because I can appeal to the kids.
And we stayed around and we asked for another batch, and we waited and we waited and we waited. Did not get one. We volunteered to help the
I really need a haircut.
other people who had such enormous stacks.
Yeah, they
And
did.
we were told that we were done. So the thing that was also an oddity to us, whether it was the Sunday bunch, I've done this long enough to know the votes are usually fairly even. And this was not the case either with the absentee type ballots or, you know, when you're seeing a stack where 98% of them are for one candidate. Those are overwhelming odds, particularly when you look at the overall vote count.
Okay. Were there other, when we were told to leave, was there anybody else still left there, still counting?
They didn't get a lot of work, so Trump wins.
Oh, yes, this was 10 in the morning, and that's why we volunteered to help the gals behind us and the gals in front of us,
The gals.
or anybody else in the room. But we were told to leave. Some other friends of ours, Dr. and Dr. Roll, were told to leave. And so I suggested to my partner that we stay and that we left. And when we were there the night before,
Has anyone, but okay, so she had the flattened ballots, which could have just been, as Liberty pointed out, just duplicate ballots. Has anyone, is there anything to this so far? I've just been playing with my Jello head.
were pallets
Is anyone paying attention to her, is my question.
of ballots that needed to be addressed and counted.
And they singled you out and said, don't count them.
And those pallets were non-existent the next day. And to be told we had to block off so much time and miraculously finish by 10 o'clock on Sunday morning and not required for any other service. That was amazing.
So something unusual happened. Trump wins.
No further questions of this witness.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Isabel, thank you for being here with us today, and thank you for working as a poll manager. As it relates to the ballots that you discovered.
This is a true story. In Atlanta, where one of my former in-laws used to be a police officer, she came across this crime scene or whatever it was, and the mom called in the two kids, Lamangelo, Arangelo, Lamangelo, get in here. And when she filed the report, she asked the young lady to spell the names. Lamangelo and Arangelo were lemon jello and orange jello. That's how their names were spelled. Lamangelo, Arangelo.
That were pristine and not folded. I'm assuming as a poll manager.
Breaking news from David Mickelson. Breaking: the official serving as Trump's eyes and ears of the Justice Department has been banned from the building after trying to pressure staffers to give up sensitive information about election fraud.
You're familiar with the process of
Nothing but corrupt.
ballot duplication
Yes, I am. But
or replication?
now, are you?
Okay, so they might be provisional ballots, they could be duplicate ballots, etc. Yeah, I mean, all of what we're saying. Again, this has been certified. This election in Georgia was certified by both the Secretary of State, Republican, and the Governor, Brian Kemp, Republican.
Are you speaking if something was flawed and could not go through the scanner? Is that what you're
Yeah,
speaking
either
of?
flawed and cannot be read by the scanner, or a UOCAVA ballot that is printed on a home printer overseas and then mailed in, and then is going to be duplicated onto a ballot by poll workers such as yourself?
I
Arangelo.
certainly am, but if that were the case with these ballots, the markings would not have been identical through 98% of the ballots.
Well, couldn't it be explained, the lack of folding, could that, and the fact that they were more identical, couldn't that be explained by the fact that they were all personally replicated and duplicated with observation by individuals working that same poll?
Well, the probability of that, I would think, is very slight, because why would 98 ballots have that little white eclipse on the very first presidential ballot? Why would all of them be exactly the same? It was very easy to see.
I want to know what she's talking about with the little white eclipse. It's a bubble. You fill in the bubble on the Georgia ballots, is what I'm guessing. And there's a slight. I don't know. I don't know.
That a ballot,
This is, by the way, they have the ability to show videos there and demonstrate. I mean, even hold up a piece of poster board or something. Some sort of visual aid the lawyer should have given this woman. She held up a ballot.
had been replicated many times. One was hand done, the rest had some other marking device, whether it was copied, whether it was scanned, you know.
So your testimony is that they just looked too identical. It's not that, because I understood you to say the fact that they were folded set off alarm, or not folded
Not
set off
folded.
alarms for you, where my more limited understanding of the process is that it makes perfect sense due to the duplication process that not every ballot would be folded. So your testimony is that they looked too similar
My testimony is
to have
that
been properly duplicated?
correct, none of them were folded.
But
None of them, if something had been done, it would look somewhat accordion like this. None of them were like this.
Well, so can you educate me for a second? Because I guess
Sure.
what I'm not understanding is why those would be folded, because my understanding of the duplication process is that they indeed would be pristine and not folded.
Well, you would not have had the score marks in them that, where they should have been folded by, if you're familiar with any type of mailing, you know, whether it's a church bulletin or, you know, your school report cards or whatever it is, they have wonderful folding machines. But they are usually sent by the printer. And I don't think it's the fold so much. It was the feel that drew our attention to how all of these were marked.
So your testimony is it's not so much the fold, it's that they felt differently. Is
Well,
that correct?
that's what drew our attention to it, was the fact that they felt differently. And then as we began to examine the ballots, we saw that they indeed were different. We had already been through 600, 6 batches, which would have been over 600 ballots. And these were much different.
Not explainable by the normal duplication process that
No.
would be done
No.
as a batch. All right, thank you.
Senator Heath.
You mentioned, I think I got this right, you mentioned a box that had 60 ballots in it.
That was the box on Sunday, yes.
I'm over here. I'm
She's
sorry.
over here. He's right there.
You saw my head bobbling around.
Yeah, I thought you were.
Oh, she's doing Jello
more
too?
important, so-
My
No,
head can
no,
bobble. Check this
nothing
shit
more
out.
important than what you're asking. So, yes, Sunday there were 60 ballots in our box.
And that box was from Quality.
Quality Living Center, and those were all generated on a ballot marking device, which is looking.
My calf, thank you for asking. This is my hot water bag, which is orange in your eyes. My calf is not great, so I still want to exercise, but I'm thinking of taking it easy. I'm thinking of going half calf. I said I'm thinking of going half calf.
Like a larger iPad. It's the Dominion.
So is Quality, I'm sorry, is that a voting precinct or is that?
No, sir. It is simply a men's recovery center. And
See, because I'll explain for at random. So half calf, when someone says, I'm thinking of going half,
that was very unusual to me also, because most of our senior centers have been trying to get at least one sort of precinct designation or early designation for the 20 years that I've been doing this, and they have not. So to have a
oh my God.
60-person facility.
Yeah.
So is this, Fulton County made mention that they had some
Mobile units.
mobile units.
Yeah.
That they, it seemed to me that they were saying like,
I just want this guy's voice on repeat asking me, well, how could I get to that street if they have it blocked off? And in 3.5 minutes, I'll be dead asleep every night. Well, how could I get to that street? Hey, wake up, everybody! Sorry.
there were mobile precincts that if they had a issue at a precinct, they could roll in there with this thing and take over the work there. I had some questions about how you reprogram a precinct from being precinct 1 to be precinct 54, for example, because it would be different.
64.
Potentially different ballots on that, like if there were school board or city council or county commission or whatever. You not all precincts have the same ballot, at least in some elections. So I had some questions about that, but
You're getting very sleepy.
are you implying, or is it possible that this was the results of a
When you wake
mobile
up,
precinct that rolled
you're gonna feel
into
completely
a quality
refreshed,
living center and
as if you slept for
they all
a
came out and
million
voted?
years,
Or
and
I can't say
everyone
it's
you
not
know
possible.
is dead.
That is a possibility.
I'm trying to understand
But
how
usually-
you knew they came from Quality Living Center.
Because that was on the ballot.
This is testimony, by the way. This is a Senate hearing in Georgia going on right now. This all official.
Box. Every batch of ballots that we received told us where they had
But that's
originated.
generally a voting precinct.
No, this is not a voting this is just where those 60 ballots had come from. They took a voting unit there, and I cannot answer whether it was a single BMD or whether it was the unit.
So it could have been the mobile voting unit or mobile precinct. I think Fulton County testified they had 2 of these, but my point is that they sort of, I'm not sure how the level of detail at the election.
I haven't seen anybody get sworn in.
I don't think you can just decide, oh, we'll have a precinct over to Kroger today from noon to 3, and then we'll move over to somewhere else.
Well, state
Well,
law
but-
mandates
I
Piggly
don't-
Wiggly is
and
the only
furthermore, I mean,
official
how-
location.
I understand having ballots, a group of ballots that
Precincts.
came from a precinct, but a group of ballots that came from an address doesn't seem right.
If I might answer your question from another direction, when I finally did receive my poll pads and we were trying to have our first voters vote first thing in the morning, the one thing that we noticed, and I I did bring, if you'd like to see, I brought the poll pad. The first thing that came up was the voter didn't belong in that poll.
Oh, my
And
God.
yet I saw her, her ID and her license address and everything like that, and I thought, well, this is screwy. I looked at it, and our poll pads were actually programmed for Adams Park Library. And so it did show her it gave her directions how to get up to where she was standing physically in front of me. And so then at that point, what was done, since when the text finally came in to remedy this problem, they, with the use of the internet, got a hold of Dominion in Denver, and they were able to reprogram those. But I think on a so that they went for my poll, I think on a different level, and I can't, I'm not even going to speculate on the mobile units.
May I continue?
Whoa, ho, 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 ho. Whoa, whoa, lady. If you're not willing to speculate on things, Trump doesn't win. We're going to need a lot of speculation because that's all we got.
So I thought that I understood that the voting system.
Okay. All right. Are we done with this lady? I think we're done with this lady.
Separated.
Yeah. Let's go ahead.
Gives our
They have a lot of questions for this lady. That's like 20 minutes later and she's still there.
text a number
Right.
for Dominion. I would assume.
And they can fix it over the phone.
Right. They fixed it right there. I can.
It's the poll pad, by the way, not the counting machines, the poll pad.
That's all our questions here from Ms. Voice. Thank you, ma'am, for being here today. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
We'll move on to,
Could I take one point of personal privilege
Yes,
for a
ma'am.
minute?
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
One of my
Here we go.
concerns over the years has been how many laws have been set concerning our voting system, and I take this very, very seriously. And so when the new secretary was in, I went into the office and I did speak with Sam Teasley, and I said, how many people in here have ever worked a polling location to see beyond theory, have seen the actual practice? And I do have to compliment Sam Teasley out of that office for taking me up, and he worked, his wife
Great.
worked, and his daughter worked, so they could compare notes.
Just
and
super.
I really appreciate when people will do that, so.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for taking
I
that
think
moment
we're
of
going to
personal
move on to
privilege.
Ms. Bridget Throne.
Let's not shake hands with the old lady, Rudy.
Bridget Throne.
People are still shaking hands. Remember? We were all like, no one's ever going to shake hands again. Thank God. We never have to deal with that bullshit. Oh. Okay.
Good
Here we go.
afternoon, Ms. Thorne. Would you state your full name for the record and
Keep in mind, a hot mess is still a mess.
tell us where you're from?
Bridget Elaine Thorne. I'm from Alpharetta, Georgia.
Okay. And Ms. Thorne, I think you're here today to talk about
I love Alpharetta.
the lack of securing paper ballots and such. And
Yes.
recount. Can you tell us about that, please?
Yes, I guess you have my whole testimony here.
Yeah, just kind of a summary, if you will.
Summary of it,
And
okay.
We'll flush it out and ask questions if we need to.
Great.
Great,
I've
great.
worked with Fulton County elections for approximately 9 years. As just a precinct manager, poll worker, I've tried to step up whenever they needed. They don't ask us managers for much help, which when Rob Pitts was talking about staffing the State Farm
there it is
Arena,
again,
they
Rob
never
Pitts.
reached out to us managers in North Fulton County to come and help with early voting. I've made extensive efforts to try to help, to try to be a manager, and then I find out that unexperienced people are managing precincts. So
It's inexperienced, not unexperienced. If you had some experience, you might know that. Oh, I guess not. This is Georgia.
it was a bit frustrating listening to you this morning. But I did, through a lot of effort, was able to get tech certified, and I was trained by Dominion
please.
to be a poll tech worker. And last minute, they said I could come down to the warehouse because they needed help. I went down to the warehouse
No.
for 5.5 days. I was there from 8 a.m. to approximately 10 p.m. My job was primarily printing test ballots, and these were real ballots. I had reams of roll-in paper behind my desk, and I could print ballots all day long. And I did, pretty much, because we had to run tests, 21 ballots for every section of a precinct. Some precincts had 4 sections, so we'd have 80-some ballots. It was quite common that these ballots would go lost or missing, and we would have to reprint them. Kind of a bummer. So in my course of printing these ballots, and when we made mistakes, before I put them in the shredder case, I would spoil them, because as a manager, I know, like, this is a real ballot. I can't let it get in the wrong hands.
Yeah, you do.
And so I started spoiling them, and
Spoiler alert.
the girl who was over me, who had no poll worker experience,
Yeah.
she's a friend of the Dominion person, she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm spoiling ballots before I put them in this suitcase that's just in the middle of the room." And she kind of questioned, and then I went over one day and I pulled out a stack of ballots out of that case that was unattended, that was 8 inches high. So throughout the day, I put them next to me, and I just started tearing them, because I could tear more than mark each one.
Yeah!
And spoil the ballots.
Yeah.
The next day, the girl who was over me, she came to me and she said that she spoke to the head Dominion girl, and that what I was doing was correct, that they were way too loose with the ballots in the warehouse. But there was no directive for anybody else to spoil ballots. And I never went back in the suitcase and pulled out extra ballots.
What a great story.
Then on Friday, when early voting concluded, I was just working at my little station, and some other tech poll workers that were trained like me came up and said, "Bridget, you're a manager, is this correct?" And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, "They're just pulling out ballots." And they had brought all the tabulator scanners out from State Farm Arena and wheeled them in the warehouse. And I guess I should back up. The warehouse was run by
You don't have
Dominion
to.
people, because the Fulton County employees had a COVID outbreak. So they were all quarantined, 24 of
geez.
them. So this was all run by Dominion software people. And I realized they probably have never worked an election, and they don't know the security and the preciousness of a ballot, of someone's vote. So I went over to look at the situation with the coworkers, and I was quickly reprimanded and told, "Bridget, it's fine. We've been doing this all week." And I didn't know what to say, because I had no authority. I was bothered by it, and I told the poll workers, I'm like, well, you know, the media card's what's really important. The paper ballots are just backups. So it'll be okay. They're not going to need these paper ballots anyway. And I was uncomfortable, and I walked away. I went back to my desk to print more test ballots. I had a break. I went over and just helped a gentleman pull ballots out, throw them in a suitcase. People left for dinner, just left the ballots sitting on the floor, unattended. I left that night at 10 p.m. and there was still a suitcase with ballots that I passed as I was walking out the door. It was completely unattended, just left there. And I was uncomfortable with it, but I went ahead and left. The next morning, I came into the warehouse. And by the way, to get in the warehouse, you just had to say, "I'm with Fulton County Elections." They buzzed you in. Anybody could go in. There was a loading dock. Anybody could drive up to the loading dock and walk in the building.
Right.
And one woman actually did.
Yeah.
And she was kicked out later in the day. So I walked out in that morning, and there were no Dominion employees there. There were probably 10 of us there, and all the ballot suitcases were sealed, and they were just stacked in the corner of the warehouse. And for me, I thought, this is just not secure. Someone could just wheel these. I could have wheeled them out to my car. I could have wheeled them to the loading dock. I could have changed out ballots. I could have done anything. So that was Friday, but I tried not to worry about it. Then on Sunday, it was my last day in the warehouse. And I was just sticking around because, in case they lost.
Marcy's absolutely right. So far, we've heard many, many, many stories about not great training. That is correct. For an event that happens once every 4 years. 2 years, really, but.
Ballots again, I would be there to reprint. But I had nothing to do, so I decided I would leave the desk, and there was no other people printing test ballots that night.
Yeah.
I thought I would leave my desk and I would go out into the floor and help. So I was away for an hour or so. It was 10 o'clock at night. I thought, it's time for me to go. And I go to my desk, and there's a Dominion worker. And there was a consultant who had been in the warehouse that whole week. I thought he was a warehouse consultant. I've now figured out he's not a warehouse consultant.
Okay.
He was from the elections group. He was from Chicago. The two of them were printing ballots. And I thought, oh my gosh, they need some more test ballots. They lost test ballots. So I sat down and I'm like, oh, let me help you guys. What do you need? And do I start from the bottom? Do I start from the top? And the Dominion worker was like, oh, you can start from the bottom. And so I started. And then he's like, well, I got to go. Then the consultant guy who was printing ballots, I look over and I notice he's printing random ballots. I'm like, there's an order when you print test ballots. The purpose of a test ballot is so that you can vote for each candidate.
Right.
So you either start from the top and vote for the first person all the way across, and then the second person, etc. This guy was just printing random ballots. And so I went over and instructed him, hey, you know, to print test ballots, you got to do it this way. And he's like, oh, do I have to vote for Trump? I'm like, yeah, you got to vote for Trump.
Okay.
And then he started printing some ballots, and then he said he had to leave, so he left. And it was 10 o'clock at night, so I
left,
just
did he?
finished up
Yeah.
printing that batch of test ballots.
Okay.
Ran it over to the person,
Yeah.
and then I left.
You left.
So then
Yeah.
I'm also a precinct manager.
Oh.
So I manage the
So
precinct in my
a multi-manager.
and I'm concerned over the emergency ballots. You guys passed a law that 10% of every voter in the poll book,
Every
you
voter.
have to have an emergency ballot.
Yeah.
Well, in my precinct, I got yellow sample ballots.
Okay.
They were on yellow cheap paper, said sample across them.
Okay.
So I got 250 of these.
We
So I
good?
called the
Yeah.
warehouse.
Okay.
I said, where are my emergency ballots?
Where?
I mean, I hope I don't need them, but where
Me
are
too.
they?
Wow.
And I took a picture, sent them a picture, and they're
Sure.
like, yeah, that's not right.
Yeah.
And we don't know where they are.
Yeah.
We can't find them. And in my training as a manager, I've never been trained the importance of securing the emergency ballots.
Mm-hmm.
When I've gone into the check-in center at the end of the night, there's no accountability. In the June election, they didn't even have forms when they checked us in.
Right. But
They didn't have ballot recap
we're-
sheets, which is
we're
the most
talking
important thing
about
you need
the
as
November
well.
election?
But they didn't
Can
have
we-
check-in forms to say, hey, you turned in all your provisional ballots that were unused. You turned in all your
Okay.
emergency
I'm going to
ballots.
stop you right there.
There's no checking.
What?
The next election, you think, okay, that was the first time we used the system. Maybe they'll get it right.
Yeah.
So the second time I went to check in,
Yes.
they
Checked
had
in.
the old check-in forms
Old check-in. Yep.
with old language, DREs.
DREs.
And I'm
They
like,
had
okay,
DREs.
I'll sign off that here's all my
DREs,
emergency
right?
ballots, here's all my unused provisional ballots.
Yeah.
So you think the third time they would get a form. I go to check in that night.
Yeah.
They don't have forms. The
What?
girl at the Roswell Check-in Center said she just made one up.
Come
But there
on.
was nowhere on there to say, Bridget had
What ab-
250 emergency ballots.
What about the DREs?
And she's turned in those ballots.
But the DREs.
There's nowhere to say that my provisional ballots, I'm a split precinct.
I'm a split
So
personality.
I did have proper provisional ballots for my B precinct, but none for my A precinct. So that was concerning. And I did write my superior at Fulton County Elections.
Yeah.
And she sent it on to her superiors.
Okay.
And I've not heard back about my concerns.
Okay.
I did send it to the Secretary of State. I sent my concerns prior to the election.
And he didn't call you immediately.
And they were supposed to forward it on to the correct people.
Right.
I went back to the Secretary of State after the election with my post-election concerns.
Did you tweet the governor?
I've not heard back from the Secretary of State. I attended the Board of Elections meeting
Yes.
this last week on Monday
Yeah.
morning while I was in the airport. And I was going to give my testimony of securing the ballots.
Yeah.
And I was muted 15 seconds into my presentation.
Oh
So
my
I feel like
goodness.
I'm not heard or it's not a concern.
I'm sorry, what?
I was also
really
concerned about the
just-
Fulton County.
Yeah?
Rob Pitts didn't mention to you this morning
Pitts!
that they had ACLU clerks in every single Fulton County location.
Right,
To
well-
process absentee ballots.
Is he any relation to a guy
I
named
was concerned
Baxter?
because my clerk was not trained. She was trained the day before. Seemed very intelligent. She's a lawyer. She wasn't trained to collect an affidavit
Oh.
if you're clearing an absentee ballot.
Yeah. Okay.
I was also concerned that she was using her personal laptop, but I guess that's
Right.
fine to have the whole voter database and
Yeah.
who turned in absentee ballots and who didn't
Right.
on your personal laptop. So those are just some of my
I don't-
concerns.
I get it, you're being
kind of
sarcastic.
Went
Okay.
around, so I'm sure you have some questions.
I have so many questions, but I don't want to ask them to
Are there
you.
any questions from any of the,
Is that okay?
Senator Heath?
Okay.
I don't want to jump ahead of any of you smart guys in here.
Good call. Good call, Senator.
You just, there's a lot of information there that could.
I'm sorry.
There was a lot of information there that could
I just-
certainly cause me concern, but one of the last things you were talking about, these
Hello. Sorry.
emergency ballots and.
I'm trying to stay awake for this guy.
You mentioned the absentee ballots. So who all knows, if I request an absentee ballot,
Yeah.
who all knows whether or not I have voted that absentee ballot?
Who all?
In previous years, we would have to call downtown to the Fulton County elections, and they would clear a voter to vote on the machines. In this election, they would, there was a lot of snafus because there were so many absentee ballots sent out
Okay.
back in June. So
All
the
right
solution
then.
was to put an ACLU absentee clerk in every
All right.
precinct
Hold on. Let's.
that would do the job. It's the one that we're using to test the scanners, the tabulators.
Yeah.
Thank you. Senator Parent, did you have a question?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna,
Yeah.
no, I really don't. I was just gonna clarify for Senator Dolezal about the ACLU Deputy Registrar's Program.
Yeah. So this is the Democratic senator, the only one there. She does a lot of clarification. There's all these questions, and apparently she's read something at some point in her life because she knows a lot of answers that everybody else is like, hey, how come all the people the voting is to tell you what, put them down there and just shove some more peanuts and the Coca-Cola. And she says, okay, well, I just want to provide some clarification at this point in time.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so the ACLU, we had a choke point, especially during early voting with people that had requested absentee ballots but decided they wanted to vote in person.
Yeah.
So to help eliminate that choke point, ACLU launched this Deputy Registrar's Program that attorneys could participate in and be trained to add additional staff to cancel the absentees and let the people vote in person. And they
Makes
partnered with
sense.
Fulton.
Yeah.
We actually wanted them to partner with DeKalb, and that ended up not happening. But
Huh.
yeah, it's not, you're not gonna find it in the code.
How come she knows stuff? It's a little suspicious. Is your last name Chavez?
They just weren't trained to take an affidavit before they cleared the ballot, which is kind of a huge snafu on my part, I would say.
On your part.
Anything?
What?
Mr.
Are
Smith,
you
do
responsible
have-
for this, Bridget?
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Thorne.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Appreciate
Okay, now
it.
we'll move on to Mark Amick.
Somebody outside is yelling something about Biden.
Mr. Smith, did you have some questions for Mr. Amick? I did not. You did not? Okay.
She's in charge,
Dana Smith,
apparently.
Okay. We'll let
So
Mr.
it's
Amick go
Bridget.
ahead.
Bridget spoiled the election.
Am I free to go?
Yes, sir.
Fucking
Tell us
Bridget.
who you are, where you live, and then try to get to the point. Be
Succinct.
briefly happy. That's
I
right.
understand.
We have a lot of people that want to talk.
Yep, I understand and
does
appreciate
not.
that.
He does not
My name is
understand.
Mark Amick. I live here in Milton, Georgia.
Good.
And I'm a
Tell us what you got.
statewide poll watcher for this past election.
Oh, good.
I want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak here today and
Great.
speak about these important matters and
Weird how they never have any of the Democratic poll watchers. Just odd.
observations that I saw in my role, fraud and other irregularities in the process.
Yeah.
You know, there's a few different things, and I'll get through these relatively quickly, as again, to be succinct.
Will ya?
There was one
Really?
instance on Election Day where I was denied entry into a polling location at Birmingham Falls Elementary in Milton, Georgia.
Well, that probably has to do with the
I was
restraining
wearing my
order.
badge and presented my Secretary of State letter to the poll manager. She denied me entry. I pointed to the information on the letter that designated that I was allowed to be there. She disagreed, would not let me in, and was turned away. I was also
She said
went
it
to
was a
two other
snafu on
locations
my
in
part.
Roswell on election morning. Both instances which I was informed that Democrat poll watchers were engaging with voters outside of the elementary schools. This was at Mimosa Elementary, and both of these turned out to be valid as well.
Hold on. Mimosa Elementary? Why were my children not enrolled there? Mimosa?
This was at Mimosa Elementary, where they were
Yeah, I know.
standing between
That's
the
what you
parking
said.
lot and the entryway
How
to
do
the
I get
school,
there?
engaging with voters to and from. And then also at Esther Jackson Elementary School,
Nah.
where the two Democrat poll watchers there
Democratic.
had been engaging with voters outside of the school while they were in line, apparently collecting voter data on their phones.
Not fraud. Okay, do you have anything with fraud? That's what we're looking for today.
Moving ahead to the
Fraud?
recount,
Recount.
the first one that is,
Okay.
in DeKalb County on Sunday,
Yeah, George has done 2 recounts. 2. And here we are.
November 15th. I arrived at that facility.
Yeah.
The observation process was very difficult.
Did they have
The
mimosas?
tables were set up in groups of 16, yet we're only allowed one person for every 10 tables, so that was difficult to manage through. We were required to be 6 feet away from the tables and as well as the personnel, despite our being issued a required mask by DeKalb County. After growing frustrated with trying to watch this process, I tried to find somewhere where I could go add some more value. So I decided to stand behind a table where the 2 workers were actually entering in the signed vote totals into the Arlo system for the final count.
Okay.
I was standing about 6 feet or so behind the workers while I could not see the computer screen to validate what they were entering into the system. I was able to read the sheets that the person was providing to them. So I decided I would start taking notes on that in case there was an opportunity to provide an audit or something that was necessary to cross-reference what was actually submitted and what was actually input into the system.
Okay.
After a while, I was able to see a pattern of what I would expect in terms of the vote totals. I'd ballpark that around 1,500.
Yep.
And one came through that was a serious red flag, and that one came through at 10,707 votes for Biden and 13 for President Trump.
That's odd.
And so I turned to the person that was next to me and said it to her, but loud enough so the workers in front of me could hear that. And that was that 10,000 votes for Biden, that can't be right. And wanted to make sure that they heard that so that it would get flagged. They then whispered amongst themselves for some time, trying to figure out what to do. Eventually, a manager was called over, and I followed that paper and that manager through the process. She went towards the back of the room where they take the ballots in and out and spoke with 2 other workers. I stayed some distance back because of requirements, but yet I could make out the fact that they were trying to ascertain what that vote total was as well and why it was that way. They also discussed about whether or not to make that change on their own based upon what they thought that the 2 counters had meant for that total to be. Although they did, I think they decided not to do that because one, they looked over at me, made some eye contact, and the conversation changed to a whisper. But at the same time, they were also talking about they could not determine how that error had occurred or fraud. Because the numbers didn't match up. It wasn't a decimal. It wasn't a digit issue. It was so significantly wrong. Later through that process, I decided to engage Mr. Tillman, who was who I understood to be the election director for DeKalb County there, and informed him of the issue, let him know the serious concern that I had, and that we discussed recounting that box. He went and verified that with his team, and he came back and agreed that that 10,000 count couldn't possibly be right. And we worked out an arrangement to where I would follow that box through the rest of the process, through
Yes.
the recounting process, to ensure that it was counted correctly. And we had a new team come in about 45 minutes later. I watched and observed that process. I think the new team that came in did an excellent job.
Okay,
And
moving
that
on.
final vote total
Next witness.
for Biden ended up being 1,081 and not 10,707 as initially submitted and signed off on by the two counters to be going into the system. So
poor training, again.
9,626 vote difference. Pretty significant.
Yes.
I also
And
did
so
flag the fact that
So they did recounts. This was the first recount you're talking about. They did another recount, and this was a machine recount. So get rid of that human error factor. They did that as well, and they sorted it out. Obviously, it's an aberration.
you know, it's, I don't know if they have gone back to look at what those other two counters have done with other ballot boxes to validate that authenticity as well, and certainly don't know if anything was skimmed off the tops of the others, a few votes here and there, give or for any given candidate.
Yeah.
But the egregious error was what I was able to catch.
Okay. Well, good job.
Going back to November 6th, these two incidents occur at State Farm Arena, where on the day that they were that they were processing the provisional ballots, the military and UOCAVA ballots on that day. Two things with this. One was after the observing.
Okay, so there was a counting error. Got that. Not fraud. Going on.
After observing the process, I flagged it the next day in email and then signed an affidavit to the fact that I thought that the process lent itself and was open to significant fraud opportunities at 2 points. So what they do, is my understanding, as it was explained to us by Rick Barron, that what they will do with the military and overseas the UOCAVA is they will email a form to that voter. That voter then prints the form, marks the form with their vote choices, and then mails back that hard copy. Fulton County, they receive it, they go through a process of what's called duplication. And what that process was, as it was explained to us, is that a worker who we were not allowed to engage with or witness to verify its authenticity will then take that form and then is supposed to duplicate that voter's choice onto the ballot. This is all, in a situation where you're not able to observe it from a distance roughly this far apart or greater. Actually, it is greater than this. So no possible way to see it, and no verification or authenticity of the process that I could see and that we were told or informed about. Another serious concern with that process happens later.
Oh my God, what is happening?
When the ballots are then provided to another individual who actually goes and casts the ballots. So you are not allowed to see what ballot choices are cast on behalf of that voter that's in our military or overseas. And that, in my opinion, was an opportunity because there's no validation or observation or ability to observe whether that was done correctly as well. And then after having, I flagged that early on, like I said, the next day and filed an affidavit to my concerns over that process, and obviously have since learned that vote total ended up being roughly 900 to nothing in favor of Joe Biden versus President Trump. So
It
pretty
wasn't right, though.
alarming and concerning.
It wasn't 10,000 votes to 13. It was about 1,000 votes to 13, which is still overwhelming, but not outrageous. But yeah, DeKalb, especially certain areas of DeKalb, are overwhelmingly. Whereabouts in DeKalb are you?
On that same day, I noticed this is in regards to the Secretary of State's representative that was on site that day. And what this is basically entailing, I believe I've provided this information previously, and that is that the Secretary, the vote count was supposed to start at 8:30. It didn't start until roughly 8:50 that morning. I first noticed the Secretary of State representative that entered the room around mid-morning, and didn't make too much of that at the time, but something told me, because I went back and looked at my notes and what I did from a picture standpoint,
Yep.
that something was not quite right. because at 11:45, I was documenting already that he was outside the room, leaning against the wall on his phone, texting or what have you. Now, that in itself wouldn't be that particularly big deal, but there's...
Is anyone listening to this guy? Because I'm just playing with cat snap filters. Get it? Snapcat? Because, see, it's Snapchat, but is at random in the room? I'm a cat. So instead of chat, I'm saying, hold on, I'm saying cat. Isn't it perfect?
But something had struck me that I needed to start documenting that. As it goes through the day, approximately 1:35, I realized that it was the first time that I had seen this representative who was potentially providing oversight actually out on the floor with the workers. And the first time I had seen that was at 1:35. And I want to clarify that I got there at 8:20. I was probably one of the first couple people there in the room. I took the first table in the front row, and that's predominantly where I stayed most of the day.
Is anyone listening to this guy? I'm not even... I just completely lost interest in his life in general. Let's move ahead. Go ahead.
The numbers, just so I can make sure that's the one I was talking
Sure.
about.
So what was signed off and submitted to be entered into that Arlo system as final was 10,707 votes for Biden and 13 for Trump.
But then you caught it, and it wasn't. And so...
would have been signed off on just like a sheet, or this would have been a box, and they would...
Is this a guy that was going to be succinct?
Would have put a number on top of it and said this is 10,000 to 1,000.
Yeah, sure. So what they do...
Oh, wait. Is this guy wearing a motorcycle
Dana
helmet?
Smith, is that correct?
Hold on a second here. Is this guy using a filter? Go ahead.
Photo. So,
I swear to God, I thought I saw somebody wearing a motorcycle helmet.
okay, so here are some packets of photos if anyone wants
Well,
some.
that's not going to help us. Does
I
anybody
also
wanna-
submitted a thumb drive that someone was going to try to pick up for those of you that don't have it. And if someone needs a copy of my affidavit or something like that, I have those here as well.
To speak it so that we can hear you.
Oh,
you're
let me
gonna have
take
to
this
pull
off.
your mask off. Yes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
You forget they're on.
That's right.
Okay, so,
But we protest them.
yes. Sure. My name is Dana Van Buren Smith.
Hi, Dana.
And I reside in Hartwell, Georgia.
Uh-huh.
And I was a poll worker
Yeah.
for the November 3rd election, and I was also a poll watcher
Yeah.
for the first initial paper ballot count on November 13th.
Yeah.
And also a poll watcher for counting the absentee ballots on the following Monday.
Okay. Tell
Which
us what
would
you know,
be
Karen.
November 16th.
Okay. What'd you see? Where's the fraud?
I, in my regular life, have been
Oh.
a licensed practical nurse for
good.
33 years.
Tell us more about your
And I
regular
got
life.
laid off from my
We
urgent
have
care job because
all
of
the
low
time in the world.
census with COVID infections. Our census dropped at our urgent care center. And then we relocated to Georgia about 6 months ago. So I found myself without a lot to do and some time on my hands.
Great.
So I decided
This
just
is
to
all fantastic background, and we really appreciate you sharing with us. Go ahead.
do my patriotic duty and be a poll watcher. So
Yeah.
I went through the training and I was really excited. And I felt like our process in Hart County was good.
Good.
You know, going into it, I thought, oh, this is going to be solid. It was wonderful. I was excited for the day. But as the day progressed and as things happened, I became more and more alarmed.
Oh, no.
I have 4 things that really bothered me, and I'm going to move through the initial 3 things pretty quickly
Good.
because the big thing is at the end.
Yeah.
The first thing, and I'm going to kind of read it to help myself out. On Election Day, someone had turned the natural gas off to the building. And so we had set up all of the machines the day before,
To run on
and the
natural
heat
gas?
was working in the rec
Oh.
center where our polling place was. I
All right,
understand
so-
that that rec center
The heat was off in the rec center. Someone had turned off the gas or not paid the gas bill. Trump wins. Next point.
used to be a barn that had been converted into this rec
It was a barn. It was a barn.
and said that
Yeah.
someone had shut off the natural gas to the
Right.
building.
Okay.
And that's why
can just
our
say
heat
gas.
wasn't working.
Just say
He
gas.
indicated that nothing was wrong with the heater. Some
Right.
unknown person in the night had shut off the gas to the building.
In the night.
Well, we all cheered and hurrayed because the heat finally came on. And
Hooray.
at that time, I did not know that Georgia law requires that that electronic equipment be kept in a climate-controlled environment.
Right.
Which, having it in a freezing cold building all night long, in my view, does not constitute a climate-controlled environment.
Okay.
I found this out the next night when I read
So Trump wins, is what you're saying?
Georgia law. Because of all the things that happened, I thought I probably better.
If you've ever, why are all these people long-winded, Producer Rich? Executive Producer Rich? If you've ever been to a city council meeting, or any council meeting for that matter, these are the sorts of people that are attracted to that sort of life. And when someone marches in there, like myself, and says, let me get right to the point, they're just, they just don't know how to process it. The first 20 minutes of any meeting is just, I just wanted to thank so-and-so for being here. And I also congratulate so-and-so. And if I just want to pass on tremendous kudos to, and then they just go down the line doing the kudos for like 25 minutes before anything gets done. And then, well, we'll approach the right people with that. And they don't.
Figure out what is going on here. And that's when I learned that the machines were supposed to be in a climate-controlled environment.
All right.
There is no alarm system.
This is the first of three things that she's going to move through rapidly here. So get ready for number 4. Somebody get a hotel room.
In the place where these things are being stored
Yep.
to notify if these machines have come out of climate control compliance. And I noted in the Georgia election law that there isn't a requirement to have an alarm system. And so my
okay.
plea to you is that I think you need to look at that
Yeah.
and require these places, maybe free, if they have gas off to the building. And
Yeah, we're on the gas again.
the sheriff who was on hand stated to us that he was sitting out in his car in the parking lot all day, which I thought was an interesting place for him to be watching what was going on.
Okay.
Our Republican poll watcher, mid-morning,
Well, we don't have the sheriff standing in the polling place. That's not how it works. Unless she's talking about a counting center. All I know is there was no gas, no natural gas.
was removed by an official because the supervisor could not locate her paperwork. Also, no one had supplied her with the proper paperwork, so she was
So again, poor training. Trump wins.
missing for a while. I put in my statement several hours. I spoke with her after because I wasn't sure
That's
how
right.
long
They
she
can
was
store the
gone, and
vaccine
she
there.
said it wasn't several hours, it was about a half an hour. But she was so upset, she returned to her home and didn't stay there,
Oh.
and was gone for a period of time because she was so rattled by what had happened.
Oh, no.
The third issue I noted was that
Okay, so that was the first 2 issues. 20 minutes in here, you covered the first 2. All right, here we go.
the special
She's now approaching issue 3. The third issue she will be succinct with. The fourth issue she will describe in detail. What are you guys doing tomorrow?
printing paper for the paper ballots to be
Oh
printed
my
on
God, the printing paper!
was not secured. and
Printing
mid-morning,
paper!
There was a poll watcher walking around with this special ballot paper, taking coffee orders on it, writing down coffee orders on this special
There was
ballot
coffee
paper that prints the
in
ballots.
the
Those
counting
precious
house?
ballots. She was taking a coffee order on it.
Was
To
the
me,
queen in her parlor?
anyone can just walk over and grab that specialty paper and then get in their
Was
order
there
for
bread
the
and
ballots they want to
honey?
print. All of that is pretty upsetting, but the worst thing to me is
Was
where
the
those
blackbird who
pictures
pecked
come
off
in.
your
And I
nose?
don't know, are we able to put the pictures up for people can see?
No.
I gave a thumb drive to someone.
Sure.
Thumb drive. There's the fraud right there.
Are those the pictures? Those are the pictures.
She's the
that you
one
passed
stealing
out,
the
I
thumb
think?
drives.
It's the
been
pictures that I
circulated.
passed out, but I
Yes.
had a thumb drive as well so that everyone could see.
Okay. Yes.
And I gave it to a man standing outside by a mailbox.
If you could pass the thumb drive over to our assistant.
Okay, I'll give you some background to the pictures while they're putting up the thumb drive.
Oh, good.
With all the electronic voting
More background, please.
equipment, the poll pads, the
And
ballot
background.
marking devices, the
Action.
scanner, all of those pieces of equipment have these plastic numbered tag locks that secure them.
Yeah.
The other thing that secures those is a chain of custody form or a recap form. That's how you know that the SD cards haven't been removed, that nothing's been tampered with. It's these numbered locks
Yeah.
that protect all those items, and the chain of custody forms that are witnessed by two people
Okay.
verify the numbers on those locks.
Right.
And as soon as you pull those plastic tabs out, they break and you can't reuse them.
Right.
So if
That-
you were going to tamper, now you have a problem
Tamper?
as long as there's a chain of custody form with two
Tamper?
witnesses, because that's what proves what the lock number was.
Just say tamper.
At the end of the night,
Tamper.
the polling station closed, and we were getting,
Why does the cat not allowed to be added the election? Because he was always trying to tamper with the equipment. Tamper. Get it? I'll explain it to at random. So a cat, they purr, okay? And then, so tamper, get it? Hold on, guys. I know you get it. At random. Look at me. It's tamper. Like a... See? Like a kid. Can you hear me purr? Tamper. Did you get it yet?
packing up.
There, thank you, Chuck. You spelled out tamper. At random, look at what Chuck said. So that's what I'm trying to say. Thank you for supporting this live stream.
All the equipment, and it's a very arduous process. Every piece of equipment has these recap forms, these chain of custody forms. You're double checking the locks, you're relocking them, you're securing them.
Yeah.
You're checking serial numbers and bagging them up in the case that matches the piece of equipment. It's a very rigorous setup so that you can ensure that you're locking up this electronic equipment in a way that it can't be tampered with at any given time.
Yeah.
So at the end of the night, we go to empty these scanners. So the voter comes in, they present at the polling pad, they show their ID, we give them a green, like a credit card. They go over to the ballot marking device and they put it in their ballot marking machine. They electronically vote and mark who they want.
Yeah.
Then it prints a paper ballot on that specialty paper, right? The voter then takes that specialty paper printed ballot, they carry it over to one of the scanner machines,
Sure.
and we ask them to look at the paper ballot and make sure that it shows who they voted for.
Oh,
That
thank
paper
you.
ballot is the safeguard.
Thank you. Someone just sent me money. I see someone sent me money. Hold on. Let me find the money. Show me the money. Come on. Catch up. Hold on. Why? It's not showing it to me. Thanks, Petrillo. Tell me how you say your name. $10. I appreciate it. Thank you. I didn't see that. Thank you for pointing that out, Producer Rich. Let me go back. It's gone. I don't see it on my screen, but thank you. I don't always see it when people do the super chat, and I appreciate it. So if anybody wants to do the super cat, get it? At random? Somebody explain it to at random. Instead of super chat, it's super cat. Let's move on. Hold on. Let's move on. At random. So, a cat. What noise does the cat make?
That's why we ask them to look at it.
Oh, thank you for the PayPal. Wait, I didn't even see that.
So that they can confirm that's who they voted for. At that point, the voter puts it into the scanner where it's scanned electronically. The paper ballot then drops down into a large container, somewhat similar to like a garbage can, a big plastic garbage can, and all day long, all those...
Oh, thank you, Michelle. I got it. Thank you. How did producer Rich, how did you know that Michelle had sent me, yeah, I just saw your name on my cat phone. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Everybody thank Michelle Petrillo for sending $10 to a cat.
Paper ballots fall down into that container, all hodgepodge, every which way,
Yeah.
and just collect in that.
Okay.
So at the end of the night, and that scanner is, and that container, that's protected with actually a couple of mechanical
Whoa.
locks and a couple of numbered plastic security locks like those you see in the picture. So the end of the night, the final task is to...
You guys are like a bunch of sleuths. Good job.
To unlock those bins and collect all of those paper ballots that have fallen into that big container.
Okay, so this is about the tamper locks, right? Do we have those pictures yet? The tamper locks were busted, is what you're trying to say. Is that where we're going here?
We collect all of those. You look up inside and make sure none of them have been...
Oh, hey, thanks, Roy. Roy with €5. No, £5. Roy, £5 in the super chat. Thank you very much, Roy. Oh, and it's a fox or a cat, one of the two. Here, guys, I'll show you. See? Look at that, right there. Come on. There, see? No, you can't see. We're still on close-up. Let's go back to main feed. Oh, for the love. It's behind the thing. Here, there. I just want to show you the super fox. See? That's a kitty or a fox or something. I don't know. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Roy. See, I'm still a small enough streamer, and I always will be, to give shout-outs where necessary. So shout out for Roy.
Hung up. There are at least two witnesses for each of those bins, which there's two of those bins. We had 4 people plus a couple other people around, plus our local sheriff was there as well. So all these people are watching us take out these paper ballots, and we put them into these red canvas bags. It looks kind of orangey in the picture.
Oh my God, lady!
Election authorities.
5 minutes later.
One little old lady looks at all those absentee ballots and decides whose signature stays and whose signature goes.
One little old lady. That's what it breaks down to. One little old lady. Trump wins.
You tell me what oversight and verification.
I told you guys with the 4th point, she was going to really take her time.
Process that is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should be. But I want to hear it again.
I think you had a question.
Workers asked how they verified the signatures, and a little old lady stood up and said, "Oh, I verified 90% of them." One little old lady, looks at all those absentee ballots and decides whose signature stays and whose signature goes. You tell me what oversight and verification process that is.
That's one little old lady.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I think you had a question.
I forgive you.
Yeah, just a quick question. And so you were a poll worker in Hart County, Georgia?
Correct.
And with respect to the ultimate count there, isn't it true that President Trump won that county 9,465 votes to 3,100 approximately?
Which is remarkable. So the Trump team is willing to listen to me, someone who lives in a county where Trump won by a landslide,
right?
Because I want to tell you, I don't give a rip who won. What matters to me is that the people's vote is more protected than their urine. Think about it. It doesn't matter who won.
What?
Those paper ballots were not secure.
Okay, hold on.
I don't care if you're a Democrat. Those paper ballots were not secure. I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican.
I gotta pause and capture this, guys. Hold on, sorry. I gotta. You'll hear it. You won't see it. Give me a second. Here it comes. Hold on. You're gonna hear the, because I just, this is one of the greatest quotes of all time.
In their urine. Think about what willing to listen to me, someone who lives in a county where Trump won by a landslide, because I want to tell you, I don't give a rip who won. What matters to me is that the people's vote is more protected than their urine. Think about it. It doesn't matter who won. Those paper ballots were not secure. I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican. I don't care if you voted for Minnie Mouse. I don't care. The process is flawed when your urine is more protected than your vote. And that is what happened. And that's why I'm here. Because you need to fix the holes that jeopardize every single person sitting in this chair.
Is there something wrong with your urine hole, ma'am?
I don't care who they voted for. Those voters, I saw a woman lead her blind husband in to vote. I saw a man pull up in a big
The vet guy told me that I had feline urological syndrome, but I didn't want to make a big fuss. Okay, see what I did there at random? Someone explain it to at random. Fuss, F-U-S, feline. See, they call feline urological syndrome, which is a
van and come out in his electric wheelchair to vote. Those are my voters. It's my job to protect their vote. It's your job as legislators to ensure that there are safeguards for their votes, and that when the law is broken and people don't follow the law, you're supposed to make sure that they do. That's your job. And it's not just my vote, it's yours too. Think about it.
Okay.
Your vote might not have counted either.
What did I do?
Not a single person in this room. You don't know. You weren't there.
I wasn't.
I was there.
Right.
I thank you for your time, and I hope you'll take what these people are telling you seriously. It's important. The people's voice matters in this country.
That's adorable.
Thank you for being willing
she doesn't know about the Electoral College.
work and give your time.
Thank you.
To work to protect the vote.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have one short witness if you want before you take a break.
That would be fine.
Yeah.
A short witness?
Grace Lemon.
She better be short. Just one lie after another in this election.
Yeah, if you would tell us a little bit your name and where you live, and
she might be going outside to emotionally release a little tear or two, which is fine. It's a human thing to do. I've been known to cry, specifically in Click when the dad died. It was very sad because he skipped through all of his life. But here's the thing: all of her friends will tell her what a wonderful job she did, which is why I don't have any friends. I don't need a bunch of yes people around me telling me how wonderful I am. I want the truth.
And then tell us what you wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, so
tell us what you wanted to hear. She is a short witness. Good job, Republicans.
My name's Grace. I'm 22 years old.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
a senior at University of Georgia.
Okay.
And I live in Fulton County.
Okay.
So
okay.
I came here to tell y'all my experience when I went and voted in person.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I went and I voted in person on October 23rd with my younger sister, who was a first-time voter.
Okay.
And when I went to check in and give them my license and verify my identity to get my voter card, I was told that there was an absentee ballot already out for me.
Okay.
But I never requested one. I've never voted absentee. I always go vote in person. And I had to sign an affidavit saying that I did not request an absentee ballot.
Okay.
So I got my voter card.
Yep.
I voted in person. Everything went fine after that.
What was her name?
The next day, my mom
Grace
called the
somebody?
voter sign out for me to get my third.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you would tell us a little bit your name and where you live, and then tell us what you wanted to hear.
Grace what?
Okay, so my name's Grace. I'm 22 years old.
The last name. I mean, if her name is Grace Smith, really easy explanation for this. But okay, go ahead, Grace.
I'm a sister in person. Everything went fine after that.
Okay, then your mom called.
The next day, my mom called the voter center.
Good.
And was told that somebody voted absentee in my name on October 7th. We don't know who that is, and we haven't gotten any answers about that since.
And on October 28th, I
That's very
filled out
bad.
an open records request.
That's voter fraud right here. We have it, folks.
For the Fulton County Voters Office. I received an email from Fulton County Registration Chief, Mr. Ralph Jones, and I called him. He asked about my experience, and he told me he was going to further investigate the situation and get back to me with more answers.
Okay.
November 3rd, his assistant, Mariska Bodison, emailed me to say that my request was given to the Secretary of State's office for further investigation. I haven't heard anything else from either of them. Then I got an email from my dad's friend and lawyer,
This is where it's taking a weird turn.
Mr. Bob Cheely.
Okay.
I spoke with Mr. Cheely on November 19th on the phone, and he wanted to know how the investigation was going. And I didn't know, so I tried to call around to find out more answers for him.
Good for her.
And I couldn't get anyone on the phone. Once I did, in the Secretary of State's office.
Okay, you couldn't, but you did. Okay, all right, I'm with you. So it took you a while is what you're saying. Okay, it's a government. That makes sense. It's during an election.
Nobody had any answers for me. They hadn't seen my open records request, and they had no answers about how the investigation was going.
Oh.
Later, I spoke with Sharon Griffin in the elections office at the Secretary of State.
Yeah.
But she couldn't tell me anything either.
Sharon.
I never got another call back, and at this point, I was knowing that I was getting the runaround from everybody.
Okay.
November 23rd, I received an email that my open records request was never received by the Secretary of State's office and was asked to submit another one on their website. And I did so and emailed the officer back and told him that I did. There was no name attached to that email. It was just open records officer. On November 30th, I received another email from the open records officer in the Secretary of State's office to file a complaint. The last line of this email read, "This will serve as the final response to this request, and your request is now closed." We tried to call the Secretary of State's office again and couldn't get anybody on the phone. So I am left with still no answers. No one will answer the phone or call me back. And I want to know ultimately if my vote was counted or if the vote that was voted for me scratched my vote out.
I would like to know that too.
That's a good. Thank you. Wow. Senator Dulles.
Okay, so there it is. This is an actual human being who experienced, we think, voter fraud and or a clerical error. But here you go. And why hasn't the Secretary of State's office in Georgia figured this out? That's a completely valid question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Can you tell me your name again?
I'm Grace.
Grace, thanks for being here, Grace.
Thank you.
Can you clarify for me what happened? And I don't think I caught it. Were
She
you able
has
to
a
vote
last
in
name,
person?
I promise.
Yes, sir.
Was it a provisional ballot or was it a regular ballot as far as you know your vote was counted?
As far as I know, it was a regular ballot.
Thank you. Did you have the opportunity to go onto the My Voter page to see when you allegedly requested your absentee ballot, when you allegedly voted by absentee? Have you had a chance to do that yet?
No, sir, I haven't gotten anything.
No. What?
When my mom called the voter center.
No, in Georgia, you log into the website and you put your information in. That's why I want her last name.
She was told by someone on the phone that an absentee ballot was cast in my name on October 7th.
Great. Maybe
Lemon?
I
Thank you.
think we're going to have a break, Mr. Chairman. I'd love to plug your information in here. I don't want you to announce your date of birth to the world, but
Okay.
you can come enter it here. I'd like to see this because you are
So
not the
would I.
first person that we have heard of
Right.
That has had this happen. And this, to me, is probably some of the most discouraging testimony.
Yes, sir.
This is probably your first or second presidential election you've had the opportunity to vote in, depending on
This is
when
my
your birthday
second
is.
one. Yes, sir.
We're going to get this right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And we need to figure this out, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Senator Jordan.
Best witness the Republicans have brought forth, 22 years old and no last name. But yeah, I wish that this is something where she could march right over there, put it in, and we could have the answer right now. That's the way things should work. But that's not the way things are going to work.
Number 7. When you went and they said, you've requested an absentee ballot, of course you didn't have it with you. Did you have to execute an affidavit saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, and then they gave you a card and
She
you were
said
able
that.
to vote on the machine,
She
correct?
said
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of when did you vote? When did you go vote?
October 23rd.
She said
Okay.
that. Were you not here? Did you just get here?
Yeah, I concur with Senator Dolezal that I think we need to check my voter stuff and
It's probably
try to
short.
figure out
Yeah.
what happened here.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, we will take a 15-minute break.
Okay. Let's jump ahead here, see what's going on. Oh, Nevada's having a hearing at the same time.
No building at all.
That's fantastic. That's the court feed from Nevada. That would be far more interesting than what we are watching, except this.
Question is methods or methodology in respect to that new material.
That's the audio that we're getting out of that. So, oh boy, let's do this. I still have a little bit of drink left, and I've had some catnip, so I'm probably in good shape. Let's just see if we get the audio that's better.
This current declaration for two reasons primarily. One, it's way two, primarily under NRS 293.415. Third to this court that
Let's go right to the NTD feed here and see if we can get a better feed on that. Okay. We'll go here. Okay. This is live. Let's go back.
3 different lines, and we would just
big
Date of birth.
It's even more evidence. And
That's the wrong feed. Here's the other feed.
The decision to certify the electors for Vice President Biden was appropriate. And so consequently, since there's no reason to favor the defendants more or the contestants more, the preponderance of evidence standard is the appropriate use here.
What about NRS 293.410, which talks about reasonable doubt? It uses kind of a reasonable doubt throughout that. It talks about reasonable doubt. Is that similar to preponderance of evidence, or is that a little higher standard?
And that's an interesting use of reasonable doubt in that statute, because it's not the reasonable doubt, very clearly, that we would used to in a criminal case. It could be read to say that if there's it could be read to offer a standard much more favorable to the contestants, quite honestly, of saying that if there's a reasonable doubt in the outcome, that the contest should be granted. It's difficult to see exactly how that would work in the civil setting, Your Honor. And that's why I think it's more appropriate for me, and quite honestly, hopefully, it gives me a little bit more credibility to you to say I don't have to just throw up as somebody sitting on this side of the courtroom who has a burden, some burden, that I just have to have almost like a probable cause type standard. I think it does have to be more than that. It has to be that we do have a burden to meet here, a burden that we will meet, that we're very confident we will meet. I think the way a reasonable reading of the reasonable doubt language in 210 means that it's similar to the preponderance of the evidence standard that otherwise the court would use in this setting.
Hamilton?
Well, Your Honor, I agree with counsel to the extent that the Nevada Supreme Court has not yet defined clearly the burden of proof required in an election contest. But an election contest, by its nature, is asking a court to do an extraordinary thing, which is overturn the results of a certified election. And so for that reason, courts around the country typically embrace a clear and convincing evidence standard.
Yes.
California, Illinois, Kentucky, Maryland, Montana, Ohio, Oregon, a variety of states. We've cited them all in the brief. So it has, obviously, if the statute set a standard, that would be the standard that would apply, or if the Nevada court had spoken, that would be obviously controlling. Here we don't have that, so we have to look at, I submit that two things guide the standard. First would be how are election means, and that is they use a higher, clear and convincing evidence standard. Second would be more of a functional approach. The cause of action sounds, at least in...
So the Trump team in Nevada is asking the judge to throw out the results of the election, to nullify the election. The goal here is to get the total number of votes for Biden under 270, in which case they believe, and there's still some constitutional question, but essentially that's, if nobody gets to 270, here's the deal. If nobody gets to 270, the idea is that it goes before the House of Representatives and each state gets a vote. In that case, Trump wins, okay? However, there's never been a disqualification of states to make it so that you don't get to 270. It's always been the majority of states. So if certain states are disqualified, the question then becomes, is it the majority of the states that are left, in which case Biden still wins? Or is it that 270 mark, which is the majority of the states, including the ones where the election was nullified? In other words, it never took place. So it's a real long shot, but this is what they're trying to do here. They're talking about, should we use a reasonable doubt standard? Should we use a preponderance of evidence standard? This lawyer is arguing, well, it should be very clear evidence that the election itself was a fraud, or whatever you want to call it, so that in order to vacate the election. The other gentleman was saying, who I'm imagining is Trump's lawyer. This could be Trump's lawyer too. This is somebody named Hamilton, and probably not Alexander Hamilton. But the other gentleman was arguing that it's a very much looser standard.
Part in fraud, and fraud.
What this gentleman is arguing is that states in general are very, very reticent in terms of overturning election results. In fact, they most of the time will not even hear election cases. Supreme Court has only heard the one, and it wasn't. The Bush v. Gore was not about the election results. The Bush v. Gore was like, look, you guys are done counting. You're out of time. So whoever the winner is today, that's the winner. And at the time, George Bush was ahead.
Under Nevada and the law, virtually every state requires a higher evidentiary standard. So for both reasons, I think that the clear and convincing evidence standard is the one that should be applied by the court here. Ultimately, and I know you don't want me to argue the rest of the merits of the case, ultimately I'm not sure that it's positive here, because I think the claim fails under even a more relaxed preponderance of the evidence or reasonable doubt standard, Your Honor.
I have a reserve going on that issue. I think it's kind of a difficult issue in regards to this, and it may or may not make much difference when we get down the road. The other question I have is, there was a certification of the election results by the Nevada Supreme Court. Does that have any impact on this hearing? And again, if you look at the statute and the timetables that things have to be done under Nevada law, and you do have time periods in which to file a contest, and it was filed properly within the time period. So I'm not sure it technically has any impact. So just a final comment.
Your Honor, I think that's a very good question, something that we looked at.
I always like to hear that. I ask the very good.
It's a good question from the very nature of the fact that came from the bench, I know. Your Honor.
Yes, every state gets one vote for the president, whoever the president's going to be, and therefore the Republicans actually control that, even though the House currently controls the House itself. The Democrats control the House. The Republicans have more states with a majority of people. And the reason is, for example, a state like Wyoming has one representative. So that one representative controls the entire state. And it counts the same as the 29 electors who might be in Florida.
The contest statute is I think, quite clear about the timing and the fact that the ministerial action of certification by the Secretary of State and then the governor does not take away the court's ability to enter an order on a contest. Of course, just by the timing that the General Assembly has laid out on that, I think is very clear. And up until matter of fact, the law actually is that you can see from the legislative history on the contest statute that it is anticipated that the timing has to be so truncated because no one is able to take the oath of their position until the contest is decided. And so that is the important time frame to look at for the contest position, is to actually go down the legislative history. If we haven't cited that, we can get that and provide that to the court. That the important thing is whether they've taken their oaths to actually then begin their terms, and they can't take those oaths until the contest is actually decided. And so that would be separate and apart from the certification process by the Secretary of State. Otherwise, the timing laid out by the legislature just would be impossible for there being an election contest.
Yeah, David just pointed out here, he thinks you get the majority of electors who actually vote. That's the question. We've never been here before, so we don't know. That being said, there is the Electoral Count Act, which settles whether or not, if two sets of electors are sent, the one that was the legal elector vote based on, or the legal group of electors based on the law that was in place on December 8th, those are the electors that count. So what they're trying to do now is throw out the electors altogether, but they don't understand that's what they're trying to do. It's very, very odd.
Contest at all, it would render the entire statute a nullity.
Depending on to whom you talk, different people believe different things. I have the tendency to think it's the majority of the electors because that's the way it's always been in the past, but we've never had a case of electors being disqualified and entire states being overturned. So,
Your Honor, I think the Nevada law speaks to that in NRS 217, sub 4. Whenever an election is annulled or set aside by the court, and the court does not declare some candidate elected, the certificate of election or the commission, if any has been issued, is void and the office is vacant. So I think, without having spent a lot of time thinking about it, that the action by the Nevada Supreme Court does not prevent this matter from going forward to a judgment.
Thank you. I agree with both of you. Thank you in respect to this matter in regards to that. So at this time, basically,
the judge agrees with both of them. So
the court's prepared to go ahead. Now, if you want to start with the argument, again, we're kind of limiting everybody their time. You can reserve whatever time you want. The law clerk is keeping track. She's very diligent at this stuff.
Basically, that was just, do we have standing here? Can I hear this case and will my ruling be valid? Well, there's other cases going on in Nevada. So it sounds like they're going to hear the case.
Now, I want you to know that I've read all the briefs, not to the brief, not to that, and I've read as much of that as I possibly could from 5 o'clock until noon today in respect to that, and there's a significant amount of pages there, but I concentrate.
It may be, it could be the camera that is actually, like, they've got a microphone on him and the official recording is going to be crystal clear, but whatever equipment the camera people have, they may have no access whatsoever to the judge. So you can't really blame NTD or whatever feed this is. It's got to be a Nevada court feed, not NTD itself.
Primarily, and what both counsel know, I read primarily the depositions of the experts in regards to this particular matter. Spent a good deal of time going through that, and I felt that was probably one of the most important places to start. So with that, go ahead.
But, Your Honor, we understand that there was a substantial amount of submissions in this case. In a very truncated position to get it all forward for the court. I was reminded of
you on until
the
about
old adage
7.
If I had more
If
time,
you
it
are
would have been
here
shorter.
and you would like to fill out your statement in affidavit form, you can do that down in room 341, and that will be collected and it will be delivered to the members of the committee.
I just want to hear
and there
about
will be
Grace.
a notary available down there for you to do that from the office of the Secretary of the Senate. So we will now pick up where we were, I think, with Scott Walter.
No, what about Grace?
Scott Walter.
What about Grace?
Okay.
We want to know about Grace.
And
Grace. Come on, everybody. Grace.
Distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the issue of a private interest group selectively funding Georgia election offices.
Oh, Jesus fuck.
I
No,
applaud your
thank you.
investigating all sorts of election irregularities.
Thank you. Go back to your tinfoil.
Is something that is important for the resolution of this matter. It is all critical information that we've been able to gather in a month, and we appreciate the court's consideration of that and taking up all the time that the court has in looking at everything. We are actually also just put together something this morning that we thought might be helpful, and that is an additional exhibit index that gives the particular exhibit and which binder it's in for our binders. Can we hand that up to the court?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
That's not the right green.
Thank you, and we will make sure that we get one of those to opposing counsel promptly as well, if it hasn't already. Your Honor, I'm going to go for about 35 minutes right now, and then I'm going to withhold the rest of my time before rebuttal, if I can do math. This case is about the failure of the electoral system in one election. And no one ever wants to say that, but it's true. The evidence proves it. The questions are, how did this happen?
I rest my case.
Who's responsible? And what do we do about it? Our free, fair, and open elections are a source.
White House Communications Director Alyssa Farah has resigned. She held 3 different key roles in the Trump administration, and her departure is a tacit nod that the president did, in fact, lose the election. It's a little too tacit, unfortunately. But yeah, she's gone. That's what happened. People are going and finding new jobs. It's got to be hard to find a job when you're a Trump admin. You know what? There's people out there. All of those people that we just saw testify, they would hire her.
Source of national pride. We spend untold millions of dollars around the world preaching the benefits of election integrity. We make sure that elections are decided by the people who vote in them.
Yeah.
And
Bluster,
not
bluster,
by
bluster.
Counting machine that they did in respect.
Okay, hold on. There we go.
By the legislature's decision to adopt AB 4 and take us to a system of universal mail voting at very much the last minute, without a sufficient amount of time to clean the voter rolls and implement a plan to ensure voter integrity.
Let me ask you about that, and that's basically the vote counting machine, the counting machine that they did in respect to the ballots, is that correct?
Are you talking about the Agilis machine in Clark County, Your Honor? Yes, Your Honor.
Wasn't that issue determined by Judge Wilson in the Cross case and the other cases that have been filed throughout the state of Nevada? And I'm raising that because the defense raised an issue of preclusion, and we're going to get to that at some point in time. That's right. And that I basically on issue of preclusion, is that something I should even consider?
Your Honor, I think the clearest answer, the reason why the answer is no, is that Judge Wilson decided that there wasn't standing to bring that challenge. And anything decided without standing is a nullity and can't have preclusive effect. There were other reasons for his decision, but because since we would be looking, well, regardless if we'd be looking at issue preclusion or claim preclusion, the lack of standing would be dispositive on that particular issue. You also do have the facts that the parties are different between the two contests, and so for res judicata purposes, that would have an effect. And one of the reason that's
Hold on just a second, guys. I want to make sure that I capture the urine lady.
Standing was so
No,
important.
that's not it. How about this?
The process is flawed when your urine not secure. I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, I don't care if you voted for Minnie Mouse. I don't care. The process is flawed when you're...
I missed it.
And why you wouldn't have a res judicata or collateral estoppel
I hate everything.
Issue come up here is because essentially the argument was it wasn't right yet. We didn't know at that point if it was going to be a problem. And so you can't really say on one hand, well, we don't know if this is a problem yet because it happened pre-election, and so the election actually comes, we see it is a problem. And then say, well, it's already decided when it was said it wasn't.
An election's a contest.
Right. That kind of reasoning doesn't really work for a preclusion narrative. So the primary issue that we're going to see with the use of the Agilis machine here is one that's purely statutory.
Okay, this guy's boring me, and I got to get up and move around. I'm starting to starting to gain a little weight in my jowls here. Oh, look at the size of my hands. Now they're little tiny hands. No, they're big. Wow, how does this one work? That's well designed. Okay, guys. Wait, can I even turn off the filter? Can I? No, I can't. Okay, so that's it. I'm gonna reset everything. I'm gonna stop down for a while and capture the lady with the urine. What? And I'll come back later, probably. I think that's like 2.5 hours of broadcasting of that ridiculous hearing that we watched. So I'll bring back Joe Guy later. I'll bring back filters by request later on. For now, I think I'm gonna have a little lunch or something, and I will catch up with you guys later. So I'm working on some credits, and then the whole court cases happen, and it's just I haven't had a chance to finish them. But here's the old credits, guys. Thanks for hanging around, everybody. Hey, if you want to watch the feeds yourself, just head on YouTube and just type in NTD. Nancy, Tyler, David. Not David the Snopes guy. Delta. And then you should be able to find the NTD channel. The NTD channel is broadcasting both these hearings, so you can check them out that way. Otherwise, go away.
Kevin, thanks for that.
You're welcome.